Hey all, I am here to talk to you about my November reading recap. This was a better month. I didn't read a lot more than I read in August and September and October, but I did feel like it was a more solid month overall. I'm not talking about everything because there are a few things that I either just didn't finish or just were really, really not for me, and I don't, I think it's hard to kind of just be like, here's a book that I didn't like, like you don't care. So I feel like it has to have something for me to say. So the good news is I am 10 and about a quarter of books from my goal for my Goodreads goal for the year, which I originally had at 100, and I've up to 150. So with the upcoming readathon and some other things, I should be able to make that, assuming, everything in December plays out well. So, hopefully I will make my goal. But let's talk about November. All right. So the first thing I read was People to Follow by Olivia Worley, and I'm going to read you the summary. A reality show on a remote Caribbean island, 10 teen influencers, 1 dead body. Welcome to In Real Life, the hot new reality show that forces social media's reigning kings and queens to unplug for 3 weeks and go live without any filters. IRL is supposed to be the opportunity of a lifetime, watched closely by legions of loyal followers. But for these rising stars, including Elodie, an Instagram model with an impulsive streak, Kira, a child star turned fitness influencer, Logan, a disgraced TikTok celeb with a secret, and Max, a YouTuber famous for exposés on his fellow creators, it's about to turn into a nightmare. When the production crew fails to show up and one of their own meets a violent end, these 9 little influencers find themselves stranded with a dead body and no way to reach the outside world. When they start receiving messages from a mysterious sponsor threatening to expose their darkest secrets, they realize they've been lured into a deadly game, and one of them might be pulling the strings. With the body count rising and cameras tracking their every move, the creators must figure out who's trying to get them canceled, like literally, before their number 1 follower strikes again. So this just came out at Halloween, so it's a new book, and I really, really wanted to love this book. I mean, obviously it's based on And Then There Were None, which is just, my favorite. So I was really hoping I would love this, and I kind of was, I think part of the problem is I was really hoping, because even the summary seems like it's a little snarky, and I thought it would be a little meta or tongue-in-cheek about sort of like influencer culture and social media, and I just didn't find that. And I mean, it may have intended to be, but it didn't work for me. And one of my challenges is, like, I used to love YA, and I'm starting to wonder if I just don't like YA anymore, because I haven't read a solid YA thriller in forever. I read a middle grade thriller that was pretty well, it was a mystery, but that was really fun. And I love, like, even in adult thrillers, even when they're kind of just meh, tend to be at least fun and entertaining. And usually if there's something wrong with it, it's like towards the end, it just falls apart, or, I feel like the sort of answer to the situation is a little silly. But I just find that a lot of YA is very dependent on every adult that has ever existed being just completely an idiot. And I also feel like, I'm wondering, like, if I just don't like, I shouldn't say that, if I don't like young people anymore. And I don't think that's true. I mean, but this is something that I found weird, is that the writer looks like she's like, I think I'm pretty sure she's fairly young, not that far out of college. And this read like somebody who was like 40 trying to sound like teenagers, because I kept being like, I kept going back and forth and thinking I was reading about like 20 somethings. And I was like, wait, these are teenagers? Because I was like, is this a YA book or is this an adult thriller? And I was really struggling, and then it kept being like, no, they're teenagers, and they didn't read like teenagers. And then their dialogue is so cringy. It's just way too much like current slang, and this is something that I really don't like. I don't know why, but only in YA novels do I feel like current and contemporary slang feels like it has to be shoved in constantly, and it doesn't really work, because what ends up happening is the book is only relevant for like a couple years until the slang changes. Because, I mean, if you go back and you read, I mean, obviously, yeah, whenever you're reading contemporary, there's going to be certain elements. Like if you read, the Dharma Bums or On the Road, or you go back and you read The Outsiders, there's certain, socias. No one calls anybody a socia anymore, a greaser. But for the most part, when you read The Outsiders, like, other than a few kind of terms, most of it just sounds like normal people talk at any era in history, just with some of the slang. And this, but I feel like a lot of contemporary YA is just over the top with contemporary slang, and then it feels like it just doesn't really work for me, because then I'm just like, okay, but what happens in 3 years when people don't talk like this? So it just was very, very heavy, and I love this kind of story, but what I've been having a problem with is like implausibility, and also not liking anyone, and like I just couldn't wait for people to die. Like, I was just like, can we just kill everybody off in this island? And, I understand sometimes characters aren't likable. I love unlikable characters. But you have to be unlikable in a fun and interesting way, not just, like, cringy and obnoxious. And so I just really struggled with this. And I'm so sad that I struggled with it, because I wanted to love this book. So I don't know. Maybe I was thinking about it a lot lately, is how like subjective reading can be, and how you'll read something and then maybe in a different mood or like a different moment in time, you might feel differently about it. But unlike a movie where I can go and like rewatch it, I just don't have the time. And so I don't think I'll revisit it, but maybe someday I would revisit it, because I just love the concept and I want it to work. But it didn't for me, so unfortunately. So that was really disappointing, but that was probably the only one this month that I would say would be disappointing for me. So that's good. So the next one, which I finally got to, is Out There Screaming by Jordan Peele, well, edited by Jordan Peele. This also came out in early October, but I'm really excited about this. And this is tough to rate for a couple reasons. I mean, it's an anthology, so it's a lot of different authors. And it's short stories. And I don't love short stories. And I especially struggle with I just don't like short stories that much. And part of the reason is because when I love a short story, there are some that I'll love, and then I want them to be longer. And then there are some that I just don't care at all about, and then I just feel like I have to fight through them. But at least they're short. I guess that's good. So, but the problem is, when you do like them, you're just kind of I want more. And so that's my problem with short stories. But what I think is really cool about this is this entire anthology is horror stories, and it's every kind of horror. So there's gory horror, sci-fi horror, sort of campy horror, social justice kind of disguised as horror, every type of horror in here. And there's a huge variety of authors. And I think I've heard of 2 of them. And so I thought that was really awesome. So I really recommend this, if for no other reason. If you're a short story reader, then yes, definitely I recommend it. Because if you like short stories and you like horror, you should totally check it out. If you're not even a short story reader, though, it did introduce me to some authors that I'd like to kind of explore some of their other work. And I just think it's awesome because, as you know, I think as anyone knows, horror is very, very heavily white and male. And this was really amazing to see, Black writers, a lot of women who, you don't get that. You don't get to see a lot of diversity in horror in particular. Well, I feel like in any genre. I mean, we know publishing is a problem, but especially I don't know, all the big names in horror are obviously white men. So it's kind of frustrating. I mean, I guess V.C. Andrews is a big name in horror, but I don't even know if she's horror. So also it was ghostwritten, I think, after 3 books. So So this was really cool. There were some I really loved. There were some I didn't like. And most of them, like most short story anthologies for me, were just kind of like, they're fine. But I definitely think I ended up giving it 5 stars just because I think it's necessary. And I think, in comparison to any anthology, I think it's doing something unique. It's something that's needed. And so do I recommend it? Yes. But, it's a short story collection. So, or an anthology. So if you don't like short stories or you don't like horror, this isn't for you. But otherwise, yeah, I would recommend checking it out. And I'm glad I read it. So the next one I read was Perfectly Nice Neighbors by Kia Abdullah. And this is the summary. A riveting and timely thriller, Perfectly Nice Neighbors asks the question, when your dream home comes with nightmare neighbors, how far will you go to keep your family safe? Salma Khatun is hopeful about Blenheim, the safe suburban development into which she, her husband, and their son have just moved. The Bangladeshi family are in desperate need of a fresh start, and this feels like just the place. Soon after they move in, Salma spots her white neighbor, Tom Hutton, ripping out the anti-racist banner her son put in the front garden. Choosing not to confront Tom, Salma takes the banner inside and puts it in her window instead. But the next morning, she wakes up to find her window smeared with paint. This time, she does confront Tom, and the battle lines between the two families are drawn. As racial and social tensions escalate and the stakes rise, it's clear that a reckoning is coming, and someone's going to get hurt. So this was a tough one, because I really enjoyed this. But it's kind of like almost 3 books. And so it ended up feeling a little long, because I felt like there was a shift about 2/3 of the way through, and then another shift. Most of the book is really just the build-up, like the slow burn of this, I guess I shouldn't say build-up, the deterioration of the relationship between these two families who are next door to each other. And I just thought it had a lot of, obviously social commentary. It makes you uncomfortable. It makes you think about, how we interact with people and, how we respond to scenarios, but also, how we perceive things. And what I thought was really nice is that the writer did a great job of pointing out sort of that subtle racism and subtle hatred that people deal with, people of color or people who are sort of marginalized. But the writer also gave you an opportunity to kind of empathize a little bit with the neighbors, who were the white people, to kind of be like, is this person overreacting? And, obviously in the book, they're not, but it definitely gives you a little bit of sort of how would I act in this situation? Do I think this person is maybe overdoing it? Are they doing it? But so I ended up, and then what happens is things kind of take a dark turn and they end up with a criminal situation. Essentially somebody nearly dies, and then there's a court case, and that's where the book kind of turned into a little bit more of a legal drama. And I was like, I don't know, I feel like it could have just ended with the tension between these families, and I would have enjoyed that. It's not that I didn't like the court thing. I just felt like I was okay, now I'm tacking on a new book. And then after that, there's a whole other reveal, which I think might have taken it a bit over the top. It wasn't too much that I didn't like it, but I think it stopped me from loving the book. And so I definitely still recommend this. I thought it was a good read, but just be forewarned that it's not necessarily that it's too long. It just kind of maybe tries to do too much. And I feel like maybe it would have been better to be 2 books. Not necessarily even about the same people, just one that was more social commentary and one that was more about a crime. So I don't know. I definitely am going to check out more by this writer. I thought it was well written, and I thought I just think it's often tough to talk about topics like this and in a way where you can anybody can empathize with all the characters, but also be angry at all the characters. And again, it's not it's definitely more one-sided with the people experiencing the racism, but it's subtle enough that you think about it from how would, in a realistic scenario, until it gets again, a little over the top. In a realistic scenario, is this person overreacting? Could it be a misunderstanding? And I just think they handled it very, very well and like handled nuance very nicely. So I do recommend this. It was a pretty good read. All right, and then the next two are actually comic books, well, graphic novel trade paperback collections. The first is Brynmore, which is a collection of 5 issues. And this is Steve Niles and Damian Worm. And if you don't know, Steve Niles and Damian Worm do October Faction. Or they did October Faction. That's not really happening anymore. And if you only know October Faction from the Netflix series, pretend you don't know that, because the comic's very good. And then the show is just nothing like the comic. So, I mean, it may have been good, but I just couldn't like it because I watched like one episode and was like, okay, this is so far off the rails. I just am not enjoying this. And again, you know, sometimes it's tough when you've read something and then they just kind of take the general concept and run with it and go in a different direction. And it, you know, if I revisit it, you know, and I hadn't just recently read the comics, maybe I wouldn't mind. But anyway, so if you have read the comics, you know, like, Damian Worm's art's really cool, and Steve Niles does a really good job of writing, like, creepy. So this is basically about a guy who comes to his hometown, which is, like, this, like, seaside town. I think it's an island. It might not be an island, but basically, oh yeah, it is an island. And he finds this creepy thing in the basement of this church he's renovating, and there's this sort of like curse on the town. And my problem with it, and this has nothing to do with the writers, or, you know, obviously the artist. The art is amazing, and the writing's good, but the problem is, like, any indie comic, I mean, honestly, any comic, but especially in the indie comics where it's like they almost give, like, a writer and artist team, like, a trial run. Like, here, you get 5 issues, or you get 6 issues, and we'll see how people respond to it. And then we'll decide if we'll give you more. And, you know, it's a lot, I think, for, like, the creative team. And so a lot of writers and artists kind of end up writing essentially a story that can be completed in 5 or 6 issues so that they don't have to worry about, like, waiting on, you know, numbers and sales numbers, and are they going to have more work, or are they not? You know, I feel like Steve Niles, especially, I mean, he did 30 Days a Night, like, he's been around, like, he's fine, like, I feel like they should just give him longer, and maybe he got longer, and he just wanted to tell a short story, I don't know, but it just felt a little, like, as soon as it started to pick up in, like, issue 3, it, like, then wrapped up really fast in issues 4 and 5, and I was sort of like, oh. Or maybe it was 6. I think it was 5 issues, but the point is, it wrapped up a little too fast. And this is a common issue. Anybody who reads comics knows, you know, this tends to be specifically, like I said, with indie comics, because they just don't give you the time to tell the story in the kind of depth that I'd like to see it done in. So I liked it. The art's really beautiful. So, I mean, it's worth checking out, especially if you're a comic reader. There's some really cool stuff going on in the indie comics, but I just, you know, I felt like it was a little rushed. And then the next one is Monomyth, which is Mad Cave Studios. Similar kind of issue, but not as bad. And I'll say, like, Mad Cave is doing some amazing stuff right now. That doesn't mean I love everything they're doing, but I just think they're, like, really flying under the radar as this comic company, and they're doing some great stories. So this is about basically a bunch of people with magic powers, and they get, like, trapped in this castle, and then they have to, like, I don't even totally know that I understood it, but the art is amazing. Like, the art was just so beautiful, and, like, I really enjoyed this read. So I don't know anything about the art, the creative team, the writer or artist. I don't think I've seen any of their other work. But I definitely liked this. I think this has potential. I think this one feels like, you know, Mad Cave gave them, like, okay, 6 or whatever, however many issues, and, like, they may come back with a second run, a second series. So we'll see, because I think there's more places to explore, but it also felt wrapped up, you know, enough. My issue, like, in this, actually, in particular, is I thought that the last issue of the comic, the art kind of, like, changed, and I don't know if, like, the artist left, or for whatever reason, it just didn't feel as good as the rest of the series. But overall, I really enjoyed this and definitely recommend it if you're a comics reader. So the next thing I read was The Manor House by Gilly McMillan, and I really like Gilly McMillan. I've read Perfect Girl by her, and then I think The Long Weekend or something, and I've enjoyed everything she's written. It's been pretty solid. This one was another one that was like solid. Like, I didn't love it, but I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed reading it through the whole thing. So the summary of this is childhood sweethearts Nicole and Tom are a normal, loving couple until a massive lottery win changes their lives overnight. Soon they've moved into a custom-built, state-of-the-art glass barn on the stunning grounds of Lancome Manor in Gloucestershire. They have fancy cars, expensive hobbies, and an exclusive lifestyle they never could have imagined. But this dream world quickly turns into a nightmare when Tom is found dead in the swimming pool. Nicole is devastated. Tom is her rock, and their beautiful barn, with all its smart features that never seem to work for her, is beginning to feel very lonely. But she's not entirely by herself out there in the country. There's a nice young couple who live in the manor itself, along with their middle-aged housekeeper who has the coach house. And an old friend of Tom's from school has turned up to help her get through her grief. But big money can bring big problems and big threats. Was Tom's death a tragic accident, or was it something worse? And is her life in danger as well? Nicole's beginning to feel like a little fish in a big glass fishbowl, surrounded by piranhas. So this one's, I feel like this summary is it's a little weak for what this is. I mean, I knew I was going to read this to begin with because I like Gilly McMillan. So I was like, okay, I've liked other books. Why wouldn't I read this one? But it's not really their wealth. I mean, their wealth plays a role, but that's not the point. I mean, it's not completely not the point, but I don't feel like it's as big of a story as like the blurb sort of here makes it out to sound like. The other thing is this is kind of marketed as a thriller, mystery, suspense, and it's more of a thriller and suspense. I mean, there's elements of a mystery, but it pieces together in front of you. It's not a mystery in the way where, like, when you're reading a mystery, you're kind of like, I have the clues and I'm piecing it together. It's more like you're getting hints of something, and nothing surprises you. There's a few little tiny twists, but it's not really twisty. And it's just, as information gets revealed, it's obvious what's going on. So I wouldn't call it a mystery in like that way. It's more of like just a thriller, a little gothic almost. It's just kind of creepy. There's some really interesting things going on here, though. And I think there's enough in this that makes it, like, there's enough, like, dark, kind of, like I said, not really twisty, but just sort of interesting points that make it better than, like, the sort of generic mystery thriller that it sounds like. And I definitely recommend it. I enjoyed it a lot. The setting was really cool. The characters were, if not likable, at least, like, interesting. And, like, I don't mind if characters aren't, like I think I said earlier, it's like, I don't mind if they're not likable. They just need to be interesting. And I did think the characters were interesting. And then about, like, halfway through the book or so, you actually start getting, this does change, it changes point of view frequently. So, but then you start actually getting Tom's point of view, and you get to see the buildup of what happened on the day he died. So it's actually, like, there's some sad things here. There's some interesting things here. I think the ending, like, is what made me like it. I enjoyed reading it throughout. I wasn't, like, bored. I was totally interested in what was going to happen next. But I would say it would probably be in that, like, middle of the road for me. But the ending's pretty good. And I kind of liked where it went. So, I don't know. I would recommend it. It's not, like, again, it's not a book I loved, but I enjoyed. So, that's The Manor House. And then the next one is, okay, so this one is very tough for me. I read West Heart Kill, and this came out right, like, just a month ago or so. And I'm just going to read you the summary. And I'll try to explain this to you. Okay. Welcome to the West Heart Country Club, where the drinks are neat, but behind closed doors, things can get messy. where upright citizens are deemed downright boring, where the only missing piece of the puzzle is you, dear reader. A unique and irresistible murder mystery set at a remote hunting lodge where everyone is a suspect, including the erratic detective on the scene. A remarkable debut that gleefully upends the rules of the game. An isolated hunt club, a raging storm, 3 corpses discovered within 4 days. A cast of moneyed, scheming, unfaithful characters. When private detective Adam McInnes joins an old college friend for the bicentennial weekend at the exclusive Westhart Club in upstate New York, he finds himself among a set of not entirely friendly strangers. And then the body of one of the members is found at the lake's edge. Hours later, a major storm hits. By the time power is restored Sunday, 2 more people will be dead. So, my problem with this book is, I'm going to read you what I wrote because there's just so many things I need to say about this book. So I wrote, I'm not totally sure how to explain this or my feelings about it. I wasn't feeling it for the first 15 to 20%, but several reviews compared it to Evelyn Hardcastle, and since I love that, I figured I'd make it to the end. There are a few times I found myself really frustrated, but also thought it might all play out well. While I applaud the creativity and experimental nature of the book, it honestly doesn't work. It feels very self-congratulatory and pretentious, as if the writer was way more interested in being like, hey, look what I can do, than he was in writing a good book. So I'm just going to start with that. So basically, this is meta. It's a meta mystery novel. And I love meta fiction. I like experimental. I liked some of what was going on. It starts by, like, essentially having these 2 guys talking in a car, and then it starts telling you, you're probably wondering, who's the protagonist here? And, like, it was a little annoying, because I was like, don't tell me what I'm thinking. Like, let me just read the book, and, like, I will think what I want to think. So that was a little annoying, but I kind of got used to it, and I liked some of the fourth wall break. I liked some of the meta commentary. And then there would be, like, these, like, kind of asides where the author would just kind of be like, here's some pedagogical, like, insight into how the concept of the mystery novel was invented, and here are some of the structural requirements of a mystery novel, and here are some of the classic mystery, novels and movies that have happened throughout history and how they handled this topic. And so it was kind of interesting, but, like, also a little over the top pretentious, but, like, I was like, you know what, I can go with it. Like, it's fine. And so that was like 15 to 20%. So I was getting kind of annoyed. And then the mystery did kind of start. Actually, the mystery doesn't really kick in for a while, but there were some interesting things going on. And so then it also switches from third person to second person to first person, back to third person, back to second person, which can be annoying, but I also think it can work. So then I continued to say, elements were good. There were some beautiful and insightful reflections I truly enjoyed. At one point, it was starting to pull together very nicely, and I almost felt like it was a mix of classic mysteries, House of Leaves, and Gatsby. And since I enjoy all of those immensely, I was very excited to finish the last 15 to 20%. And that's exactly what I felt like. There was some, at this point in the book, like 60, 70% of the way through, I was like, I think I'm going to really end up loving this. It took me a while to kind of buy into it, but I think there's some really cool things happening here, and the experimental stuff is a little over the top, but I think it works. And then I mentioned that there was a twist that was iffy. And there was. And I don't want to spoil this, but I'm going to spoil it. So I would just skip to the next book on my list. I put the chapters in. So if you don't want me to spoil this, skip ahead. And the chapters are there, so you can skip freely. I will, put a chapter here as spoiler, and then the next chapter. So anyway. Okay, spoiler. I'm going to put put a picture up. Okay. So basically what happens is, at about 20% left, the detective is killed. Which I was like, weird. But I thought, this could work. This could be cool. And then it switches from a novel to a stage play. Also weird, but I thought it could work. And then the narrator of the stage play is the reader, who is now interviewing the characters and taking the role of the detective. Also a little weird, but again, thought it could work. But then what happens at the end, you're 95%. You've had the first 2 deaths have been solved. So you figured out what's going on. And then it ends. And you know who killed the detective? The author. And the author comes out and goes, I did it because I could. And I was really, really pissed off about that, because to me, that just felt like you just gave me a 300-page philosophical experiment. I didn't sign up for that. I just wanted to read a book. And while like some people were loving it because it was so meta, it was also ridiculous. I just felt like this guy tried to write a mystery and then couldn't figure out how to write himself out of it. So he decided to just like cheat. And that just made me very, very angry as a reader. So I get it. Some people think it's super smart and twisty and cool. Good for you. If you like that, more power to you, whatever. But I just felt as a reader, it was insulting. And it was just kind of like really, really full of yourself as an author to basically not give your reader an ending and say, well, we were teamed up because you're a voyeur as an author, and I as a writer can kill whoever I want, and you can't stop me. No, that's just cheating. Finish your damn book. Because I just invested, not hundreds, but like I invested multiple hours in reading this book. The least you can do is write me an ending. And that pisses me off. So anyway, that's my rant on that. Didn't like it. Very unhappy with the ending of this book. So I haven't finished. The last book of the month is Alice Feeney's His and Hers. And I'm like 65% of the way through. But I wanted to get this done because I'm hoping to finish it tomorrow, but I don't know if I will, just because of like my plans for the weekend. So I'd like to finish it as soon as possible, but since I don't know if I will probably either do a separate review on this book, or I'll just start my December one with like the last 30%, but I don't know where the hell this book is going. Everything, the 2 books I've read by Alice Feeney have like completely surprised me. Daisy Darker didn't totally surprise me, but Elements did. So, I don't know. I think I know what's going on, and I don't like it if it is what I think it is, because I just feel like it's overdone. But we'll see. I could be wrong. I'm really enjoying the style of writing and, like, just the narrative, and the characters are kind of horrible people, but also interesting. So, so that's the last one, and I'll let you know what I think when I finish it. And so then Sir Chonk read 2 books. He read Guests, which he didn't like, and he said basically it was, like, 80% of like a guy pining over some girl that broke up with him, and then the story starts and then it ends. So it was like too short, and he didn't feel like it like went anywhere. He didn't hate it, he just didn't like it. And then he finally finished Look Closer, which he gave 4 stars, which, for him is big. And he said, it took a while to get going for him, and he was actually like not liking it at all for like the first like half almost. Because he just thought the characters were annoying and just like insufferable. And then he called a couple of the twists, and then he was like, but he said they were like, they made him happy, because he was like, I called them, but because it was well done, so I was like, I think something's up with this, and it was up with that. But he felt it was just really well put together, and he said there are enough like moments of ooh to make it like a fun read. So he enjoyed it. He thought it was a fun, twisty thriller. I love this book. I think this would make an amazing series, like a TV show. It would just be great, because it's just very twisty, but like done in a way that's just like Sir Chong said, it's effective. It's done well. Believable. I mean, again, it's a mystery thriller, so is it like believable in reality? I don't know, but believable in the context of like the genre for sure. So that's November, and I don't know if Sir Chong already said he doesn't think he'll read anything this month, so we'll see. But I will be back, and hopefully at the end of December, I'll have a bunch of exciting stuff for you, and I'll let you know what I think of His and Hers when I finish it, and let me know. Yeah, let me know if you've read any of these, if any of them interest you, if you're frustrated with that ending in West Heart Kill, or if that would annoy you if you did listen to the spoiler. All right. See you later. Bye.